It's Mouth Experience Monday. On this episode, JD blinds dude with a Jim Beam single barrel shelfer. Find out how it gets rated on this episode of The Bourbon Hunters. Have you thought about supporting our podcast? Head on over to our website at www.bourbonhunters.com where you can by purchasing Bourbon Hunters gear and signing up for our Patreon, which includes exclusive access to single barrel announcements from our private single barrel club. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us on our hunt for great bourbon. Reward yourself and sit back, grab a pour, kick up your feet, and enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Bourbon Hunters. I am Dude Poole, and I'm joined by
JD Fritches.
JD Frittertits. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, Giggle Bits.
Giggle Bits, Giggle Pour to Giggles.
Pour to Giggles, I like that one.
That's my favorite. All right, so today we have a blind that JD has brought. It's just the two of us. He knows what it is, so that doesn't really make it a blind, but it kind of does. And he's blinding me. I have no idea what's in the glass, and we are going to... I just looked over at JD's glass, and he definitely giggle poured that one. Holy cow. So let's nose this and talk about what we think. While we're nosing, while JD's getting his notes... Yeah, this is kind of a nice... You know what's interesting about this note? For the nose is that it almost feels like it's muted, but it's not.
Right.
There's like this muted characteristic to it, but it is not muted. It's just almost like subtle.
To me, it's like it's got this thick layer of a note.
Thick is a good word.
You can't really get to the underlying notes right away. But it's super like toffee butterscotchy.
Yeah.
Which I know what it is, so it's actually really unique to the brand.
I get the butterscotch for sure. Holy cow. That is thick. That is, it's almost like a molasses I know this doesn't make a lot of sense, but like when the nose binds together the other things, it almost comes together as like a rich molasses.
It's got one of those like subtle apple, like a Fiji or Red Delicious.
There is a crisp type of fruit note to it that's kind of in the background. It's almost like the finish of the nose, if that makes sense. This is interesting. I'm actually pretty intrigued by this,
and I can't wait to tell you the story about how I got my hands on it.
This is an explicit podcast. You don't have to worry about the words you use.
It's of age.
Oh, good. That's good. That's good. That's good. Right, Clyde? What do you think, buddy? He's cashed, man. Have you seen him this cashed?
No.
He is out. He just came from the gym.
It makes sense.
And there was a lot of people he had to bark at.
Did he get a lot of pets?
He did, but he also got a lot of greeting people at the door with barks and, I don't know who you are, stranger danger, stranger danger.
We had to take Weezer to the vet yesterday.
Oh, no.
Got in a fight with the foster dog we have.
Oh.
Tooth or nail punctured above his eye.
Yeah.
And it got infected.
Do they get along for the most part?
Male and male. So we've actually decided that we're probably not going to foster adult males anymore because Weezer doesn't like the feeling of coming into his territory, I guess. I don't know. It's a space thing
well, there's definitely a territorial thing. A lot of times there's guidelines, or not guidelines. There are guides on how to introduce a new dog to an already existing, household. Introducing the smells, keeping the original dog in a room separate from everyone else, letting the new dog get its smell into the house, stuff like that. So there are some things you can do to help.
Well, Boots, the female dog, there was no issue.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, when it's male-female, there's generally not.
Gotcha.
When it's female-female, there is, and when it's male-male, there is. Okay. Not always, but there can be. Some dogs are just not alphas to begin with. But when you have two alphas that come together, that can cause some problems. So you have to do some things sometimes to help that along.
Right. And it was about a week and a half in when they had this fight. So it had been some time where they would growl at each other, but nothing really transpired. But this one specific time, I think Marmaduke is the dog's name, 140-pound full blood Great Dane, got a little bit too close to Weezer, and it just happened in an instant.
Yeah.
And they were going at it.
But Marmaduke wasn't being aggressive.
No.
Weezer was aggressive toward Marmaduke.
He's our dog. You know, and
I mean,
he
there's
the
a territorial thing for sure.
And he's mixed with Shepherd, and so he's Great Dane Shepherd.
Yeah.
So there's a little prey aspect to him as well.
Well, and protective.
Right.
You know, and territorial type thing.
Way off topic. Sorry.
No, you're fine. We don't normally do that on a mouth experience, but it's fine. I just had a taste of this, and I get the same thing I got on the nose on the taste, in the sense that there's a thickness to the bourbon. Mm-hmm. Or whiskey or whatever this is, and there's a lot of layers to it, but none of the layers like pop out at you. They're all subtle layers.
Yep.
But all those layers come together to almost be like a thickness in the palate.
So it congeals, is what you're saying?
I don't know. Maybe big words. So all those layers come together in big words to a thickness that I feel like is good. It's pleasant. This is pleasant. I know last week we did the Elijah Craig A125, right?
Yep.
I wouldn't put this in that realm at all. It's more subtle.
That makes sense.
Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is
it's a standout.
Well, it's a high proof generally.
Yep.
I think it's like 118 or something like that for the A125. This one I'd say is closer to 100. That's my guess. But I think what's interesting about this is something you could end up being like a daily drinker. This is something you could just sit down with for an evening, and you wouldn't even really know that you're probably getting drunk and you're getting drunk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you'd probably drink through this a little bit quicker, because the flavors, and muted's not the right word. They're just subtle. But there's a thickness to everything that lets you know that you're getting some flavor. And I don't know how to explain that other than that.
Mm-hmm.
This is good. I'd probably give this a 3.4.
Respectable for what it is.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but that sounds. I like this.
I get like a bread pudding on the palate.
Yeah, that's a good descriptor. That's a thick flavor that I could definitely see going with bread pudding. This is. Yeah, I think that's a good descriptor, because everything I've described in my head goes along with bread pudding. When you describe bread pudding, you get like this thick, not necessarily a rich flavor, but a thick, almost like hearty flavor.
Yep.
Like an not earthy. That's not the right word. Down home. Decadent, but not decadent. No, because decadent to me means rich.
Okay.
Like a decadent chocolate or a decadent, whatever.
Airy.
I would say thick, almost like a filling, down home dessert that you might get, when you visit your family or whatever in the Midwest somewhere. Not crazy in your face with flavor, but the flavor's there. There's a thickness there. There's a when you're done eating this dessert, you're going to be full. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to eat a lot of it. Does that make sense? Like dense.
Perfect sense. Yeah.
You know
dense.
what I mean?
I like that.
Dense, thick. That's how the flavor comes off to me. All right, give me some hints, man. Let me.
We've done a tour here, a special tour on one of our trips.
Special tour. We've only done one special tour on our trip ever, I think.
Do you think so?
Well, the only tour I can think of that was special, that you would use the word special on our trip, would be Jim Beam. But where else have we done a special tour? Because Old Forester was on a pick. That wasn't on our trip.
No, that was a terrible hint.
That was a terrible hint. Like, you gave it
I
away,
gave
right?
away the answer.
Okay, so Jim Beam, of course.
It is Jim Beam, James Beam.
So
what do you think is James Beam based on the palette?
I would not have gotten to that on my own, but once you say that, like once you've just now kind of unveiled that it's Jim Beam, I could see it being Jim Beam.
What I think it's distinguishing in an aspect, I don't get too much of a nuttiness.
No, there's no nuttiness at all.
Do you have a proof guess? Oh, you said about 100.
I said around 100.
So it's a unique bottle.
Oh, I've never even heard of this.
It's a Jim Beam single barrel. Now,
Okay.
these you won't find these on the shelf anymore.
Is this a distillery single barrel or like a...
It used to be a shelfer.
Okay, so this was something that the distillery released.
Yeah. And these little strips here with the barrel identification, I actually had a picture, and when we went on that special tour, I showed the picture to our tour guide. Can't remember her name. But she said that she recognized it, and they stopped doing these in about 2020.
Oh, really?
So I was in Georgia for Thanksgiving a few years back, and wife and I were driving around, and I walked into one of these liquor stores that was in not a great part of the town that we were in.
Sure.
And I walked in, and they have a huge bourbon selection, but this was sitting on the shelf, and I can only guess that people in that area don't hunt bourbon, And so this was
Right.
sitting there, and I got it for like $59.99. It's a 95 proof Jim Beam single barrel from pre-2020.
Nice. That's cool. I like that story. That's to me, there's two things about bourbon that I love. One is the stories you get. Like, think about the movie Neat and with Freddie Johnson and his story about sharing with his brother and his dad, and like the stories that you get out of bourbon, tasting bourbon, hanging out together, but then the stories of finding the bourbon. Like, that's kind of cool. When you become a huge bourbon fan, the stories about finding bourbon are actually kind of memorable as well.
Right.
Like, my first time finding Blanton's was like in the wild was like my fun story. That was a cool story.
Going back and forth, leaving, going back in.
Yeah.
Hey, I just saw the guy.
I just saw this guy leave with Blanton's in his hand. Well, he was a cop. I don't give a shit.
And in Ohio, Ann Dimmick in our show said if that happens and they're holding stuff back, to call OHLQ.
Yeah, there's a line for that, right?
There's a LESC, the
LESC line. All right, guys, thanks for joining in. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. We try to bring you stuff that you can potentially get a hold of, but not always. Sometimes something unique, sometimes something that you're never going to see, sometimes stuff that's just a shelfer. But hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Give us a 5-star rating if you did. If you didn't, give us a 5-star rating. But check out our website at www.bourbonhunters.com. Join our Patreon. Get exclusive information or announcements on our barrel picks that we're doing. Upcoming, we have, I think, Maker's Mark. We have
Jack Daniels.
We have Angel's Envy. We have Lux Row coming up this year. And we
potentially Knob Creek.
Knob Creek. Well, Knob Creek is a for sure. We're doing Knob Creek as well.
Can't wait for that one.
Yeah. So we've got 5. Well, the Lux Row is going to be most likely 2 releases at the same time. We'll be doing a Wheat and an Ezra.
Oh, very nice.
Ezra 7.
I love the old Ezra 7.
And the Rebel 6-year 100 proof.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 releases this year.
Sign up. You're not going to want to miss out.
Yeah, sign up on our Patreon. You do not want to miss out. These are all pretty big ones. We're working on other ones as well. Heaven Hill and Campari, which Wild Turkey. We're working on those. Those might slip into 2026, but that's okay.
And I'm working on Rare Character.
We're working on Peerless. We're working on some other things. Those might slip into 2026, but we are working on some things to make sure that you get your money's worth on our Patreon. Thanks a lot. See you next week. Thank you for joining us on yet another hunt for bourbon. Please give us a 5-star review anywhere you are listening, but if you don't, leave some constructive criticism in the review so that we can better improve our show. But until then, sit back, grab a pour, kick up your feet, and enjoy some bourbon. The Bourbon Hunters podcast has been craft distilled, produced, recorded, and edited by Dude Pool. For any questions, comments, or recommendations, please reach out to info@bourbonhunters.com